what hasn't? And how to keep your garden routine injury-free. Plus, has your vacation left your plants feeling parched? We'll show you how to quench their thirst. Since I moved into this place, and a lot has happened in that time. I've planted hundreds of plants, thousands of bulbs, brought in well over 100 tons of stone, and in effect, transformed the entire property. This area was full of the hardest, most impenetrable clay I've ever encountered. But after 2 years of adding all kinds of organic matter, leaves, rotten straw, and so on, it now supports plants that require good soil and excellent drainage, including Japanese maples, viburnums, and hydrangeas. This large bed here, which is roughly 200 feet long, was nothing more than lawn originally. Now it's a mixed bag of evergreen and deciduous delights. And of course, I've added a few water features, a dry stream bed with bridge and path, a fire pit and seating area, an outdoor kitchen, a garden shed that looks more like a saloon, and a number of other garden beds along the way as well. You may remember seeing this ugly, dilapidated structure. It was an eyesore beyond description, really. But where it once stood is my latest garden, one that's just beginning to take shape. And I should add that I've planted every single plant. Now, although I'm far from finished, by and large, I'm pleased with the way things have turned out. But as gardens mature, or more precisely, the plants themselves, things change. Beds may become overcrowded with too many plants. Certain plants may have started to outgrow their original space. Or maybe we just get tired of things and decide it's time for a change. And that's cool. After all, gardens shouldn't remain static. So today I'm going to address those very issues: crowded plants, runaway plants, and plants that no longer belong in their original home. This mock orange, which is just beginning to break dormancy, is a sweet-smelling but kind of gangly and overgrown shrub. And it's growing way too close to this juniper here, to the point where the branches of both are touching, and the juniper in particular is suffering as a result. Now, in a situation like this, you have two choices, basically. You can remove one of the plants, or you can prune the offending one, reducing its overall size. And in the case of this mock orange, I've opted to do the latter, pruning the bulk of the branches back hard, to within a few inches off the ground, but saving several of last year's branches along the way. Now, this kind of shrub can take this kind of radical pruning. In fact, I could have pruned the whole thing back to the ground, were it not for the fact that it actually produces those sweetly scented flowers on last year's wood. That is, the branches I chose to save. Okay, Mr. Juniper, you'll be better now. You've got room to grow. Now, here, I've got a big Chicago luster viburnum, and next to it, a euonymus known as burning bush. Now, I know it's a little hard to distinguish one shrub from the next, but I think you can clearly see that these guys are overcrowding one another. And in this case, I'm simply going to prune the terminal growth of the branches on both shrubs, making what are known as heading cuts to reduce their overall size. I'll have to repeat this process every few years, but it's a simple, if not short-term solution to overcrowding. This fern-leaf Chamaecyparis is in a bit more trouble. You see, this little guy isn't getting near enough sun because it's being shaded by a number of different shrubs. So, as a result, it doesn't look so good. And the solution in this case is to dig up the Chamaecyparis, getting as much of a root ball as I can carry, and transplant it into a spot where it'll get plenty of sun and room to grow, such as my new evergreen bed. Now it's time to deal with a runaway plant. And here it is, a variegated vinca that's taken over this bed. I planted 3 little pots of this stuff about 3 years ago, and I can't take it anymore. It's not particularly attractive, and it's definitely invasive. Of course, getting rid of it is no small task. Basically, you just grab a handful of vine and start pulling. But beware, this stuff takes root along the length of its vines. And unless you get the entire vine, you'll have lots more vinca within a few weeks. And by the way, I don't mean to give all vincas a bad rap. This solid colored variety in the backyard is great, having formed a nice, dense ground cover in the same 3 years. And just look at the pale blue flower. Here's another runaway plant. It's Chasmanthium latifolium, or sea oats, and it too is taking over, forming clumps all over the place. And the solution in this case is to dig up the plants. Now, sometimes the plant you want to get rid of is growing smack dab in the middle of the plant you want to save, such as here, where these sea oats are growing right up through this epimedium known as bishop's hat. And here, the only real solution is to dig up both plants, separating the good one from the bad one.
I do believe I've got it.
And replanting the good one. Alternatively, you could brush the offending plant with an herbicide, but let me warn you, a number of herbicides have the ability to translocate, that is, move through the vascular system of the plant, including its root system. So if you're not careful, you'll wind up destroying not only the offending plant, but surrounding plants as well that you'd rather save. Finally, I've got to deal with this familiar shrub, a contorted filbert known as Harry Lauder's walking stick. Now, I'm okay with this plant, I guess. Its twisted, contorted branches are certainly interesting during the winter months, and by early spring, these little catkins appear and they add a little more visual interest. But by midsummer, this plant is not particularly attractive, and this spot deserves a specimen with year-round interest. So in goes the shovel and out comes the plant, destined for a new home elsewhere. And as for the gaping hole that's left behind, well, I'm gonna have to think about it. Feeling more pain than gain in your garden? Some tips to keep you in top form coming up next. Plus, never know when to water? This little critter can help.
This program
Gardening can be a pain in the neck, and back, and knees. But enjoying the great outdoors doesn't have to leave you in traction. There's no getting around the fact that yard work can be hard work. And unless it's done properly, yard work can lead to injury. Wes Cole is my personal trainer and overall fitness guru. Through his program, known as Habitual Health, he's taught me that a long day in the garden can be a lot like, well, a long day in the gym.
Awesome. Yeah.
Preparation for the two is actually more similar than you might think.
It's critical that you warm the body up before you stretch. It's very important to elevate the muscle temperature first. One of my favorite ways is just to take a hot shower. I know it sounds opposite when you're about to go out and start sweating, but taking a very hot shower, it's what a lot of athletes do. It's been proven to really decrease injury.
If you don't feel like getting all wet, you might try just taking a little stroll through your yard to warm up those muscles. Well, that was simple enough. Just a pleasant walk in the garden, look at all the chores you need to accomplish and all
Absolutely.
that. Once your blood is flowing, you can move on to those stretches. It's best to start out with the largest muscle groups.
Your largest muscle groups will be your legs first. And what I like to get people started on is just a basic hamstring stretch. You just put your foot up right on kind of in something elevated, not too high, and then just simply come down and then stretch. You should feel a pull right in your hamstring.
Oh, yeah.
Really stretch it
And
out.
there's nothing worse than a pulled hamstring.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very common injury in any sport.
Now we move on up the body to the hips. We use a shovel for balance, but anything to keep you from taking a tumble will do. Work each side equally to ensure you keep an even keel. Toe raises get the blood flowing to the calves to help prevent dangerous pulls and tears.
Who's got the better calves?
I don't know. I think we should let your audience decide.
The old man or the young man?
Absolutely.
If you're suffering from an aching back, you may just need a hug. This stretch works all of the muscles along the spine, with an added bonus of stretching your biceps.
You know, I should be pretty good at this. You know why?
Why is that?
Because I'm a tree hugger.
Absolutely.
I like this. And we can assume that most gardeners have at least one tree.
Yeah. You might want to
I have 112. This is another nice stretch.
It's a good one. Stretching all the back muscles. And then after you've done a few of these, kind of just move to the side. Just like that, kind of get the obliques. And then you're going to be ready to garden here pretty soon.
Wondering how trainers come up with those strenuous gym routines? Look no farther than your own backyard.
I tell people all the time that as a trainer, someone that spends most of my life in a gym, we're mimicking what you guys do. You know, in the gym, we're basically simulating labor activity. So really what you guys are doing, what gardeners are doing, that's organic exercise. That's the most natural form of exercise there really is. And people have been gardening a lot longer than they've been in the gym pumping up.
You won't be able to tackle too many tasks if you have sore arms. So some simple arm circles will help you get your body ready for the range of motion needed in gardening.
The shoulder is it's a very maneuverable joint. I mean, it can be vulnerable to injury, especially if you don't warm it up.
Wes, here's a fairly common mistake I see all the time where people are doing a routine task like this, but they're bent over like this and putting a lot of strain on the back.
Absolutely.
So what's important, you want to try and remain as upright as you can when you're doing something like this. I'm just fluffing some mulch in this bed, but if you'll keep the back more upright, then there won't be that strain. Also, make sure to buy tools with handles made for your height. It'll help prevent a lot of strain associated with those upright tasks. Wes, let's just take a simple act like bending over to pull some weeds or maybe pick some bush beans. Now, I see people all the time, they do this.
Sure.
Not a good idea.
No, it's not a good
All right,
idea.
show me how you would go about it.
Well, one of the best ways to do it is use your legs a little bit more. Bending over, getting a kind of a little bit tighter abs, better posture, and just pick and then stand up.
So it's like a series of squats.
Yeah, it is. And after you do this, 10 or 15 times, I mean, that's enough to build some muscle.
Here's another surefire way to hurt the back. And again, you see this all the time, where somebody just kind of reaches over, grabs, and lifts.
Yep.
What do you call that?
Grip and rip.
Grip and rip. So you grip something and rip the back.
Absolutely. What you want to do is you want to get your legs involved into it. Keeping your back straight, shoulders back,
Right.
and flip it up over, and then lift, more of a squat. Just like that.
Piece of cake.
Piece of cake.
If you have back problems, you may be tempted to drag that bag. And that's okay, as long as you do it correctly.
Keeping your arms straight, okay, almost like cables, not pulling with your arms, and using your legs to pull it is the best bet. Back straight, just like so.
Okay, Wes, a very common task, lifting the wheelbarrow with a fair amount of weight in it. There's a right way and a wrong way.
Absolutely.
Why don't you show us the right way?
Okay, get those legs in there, back straight, and use your arms as cables. Do not pull with your arms.
Using a wheelbarrow with two front wheels like this one really helps to reduce strain from an uneven load. Let's talk hydration. A lot of people, they get out there sweating like crazy and they forget to consume a beverage.
You need to drink when you're not thirsty. Continuously make an effort of just getting a habit of going over and drinking water, whether you feel like it or not. And that way it won't, that dehydration won't catch up with you.
Cheers. So before you begin your day out in the garden, don't forget to stretch out those muscles. You'll have a great looking yard, and as an added bonus, a healthier body. You ready to go work out? Coming up, we'll show you how to bring a little southern charm to your garden. And is your newly planted tree feeling a little waterlogged? This dandy little device will have you fixed in no time.
May 6th, the hottest real.
Azalea blossoms are a sure sign of spring, but growing azaleas can be a tad tricky. So here to regale you with the secrets of azaleas is Jimmy Turner from Dallas, Texas. Royalty of the garden. That's how azaleas are often referred to among aficionados. I guess with all this pomp and circumstance going on in one shrub, the phrase fits. With over 6,000 varieties available today, most folks can find an azalea to suit their zonal requirements. They do, however, grow best in mild, humid regions, and let's face it, that's not the first description that comes to mind for Dallas. Still, these thriving azaleas are the epitome of sophistication. For many gardeners, nothing can beat the newest azaleas. Plants that'll give you a regal show of colorful blooms in the spring, then bestow you with an encore performance in the fall.
And not only that, they seem to be a little bit more heat tolerant and alkaline tolerant. So if you're in the South, this is the azalea for you.
Azaleas are moderately forgiving plants too. But here's the deal with nobility. There are some things that have to be just so. Rules that must be adhered to, and that's certainly true of azaleas.
The general requirements for azaleas is actually pretty easy. You just need afternoon shade, which we all have that with some tree in our yard. Make sure that you get regular watering, regular fertilizer, mulch it twice a year with pine bark or pine needles, and keep them fertilized 2 to 3 times a year.
In addition to the general requirements, there are also some specific requirements.
And with azaleas, there's 2 key things: drainage and soil prep.
Now, Jimmy will be the first to tell you that the native soil of Texas is heavy alkaline clay, the exact opposite of what azaleas need to thrive. What's a Texan to do?
What we're going to do is we're going to take the plant, pop it out of the ground, and plant it on a new pile of soil, and it'll be good as new in a couple of years.
Using a pitchfork, Jimmy makes a ring a foot away from the base of the plant. That gently lifts and dislodges the roots.
Okay, we've got it good and loose. I'm going to switch out to a shovel now to cut the roots.
Once the azalea has been popped out, a closer inspection shows there's not much compost left after 10 years in the ground.
I'm just going to give it a good shake. Make sure that the root ball is nice and clean. And we're good to go.
Good to go to a brand new home and brand new soil.
If you're replanting an azalea or planting a new azalea, this is really the most important part. This piece right here, this is the bed prep. And this is composted pine bark mixed with sandy loam and peat moss. This is exactly what azaleas need to grow in.
Jimmy is creating a raised bed of sorts by mounding the planting medium a foot to 18 inches high. That's the azalea's life support system for the next 5 to 10 years. To provide the best drainage possible, here's his secret ingredient: expanded shale. A 2-inch layer of these puffed rocks will allow water to flow through the roots beautifully. Next comes a few handsful of high nitrogen fertilizer that also contains sulfur and iron.
Blending is just like making cornbread or muffins. Blend it as well as you can. And we're going to dig a little bit of a hole, and if your bed prep's good enough, you should be able to do it with your hands. And we're ready for the azalea. Put it in straight and level, and then we're just going to mound this soil back up around the top.
That's going to rejuvenate this plant for the next 10 years or so.
Rule of thumb is when this is flat with your regular ground, it's time to relift them and do it again.
Now you can have beautiful blooms sooner with a different approach.
So if you want instant gratification, go buy yourself a new azalea. Plant it the same way, in the same bed prep, you're good to go for 5 to 10 years.
Now, if that seems like a lot of effort for 1 or 2 azaleas, no worries. There are lots of other gorgeous plants that make great companions and, oh, by the way, also have the same cultural requirements.
If you're going to spend the time and money on azalea prep and really do the soil right, you might as well get extra bang for your buck and use that same area to plant camellias, Japanese maples, eucharis, and especially ferns. They all love the same type of preparation in the same environment.
Over time, azaleas can start to look a bit ratty, and that's when a light pruning can keep a plant more attractive and compact. Azaleas branch out easily, so where you cut isn't much of an issue. Best time to do this shaping is shortly after they flower in spring.
If you want to do a rough pruning, take them way back down, and we'll go back even into the thick woody wood right here. And don't worry, this will actually branch out from here. Azaleas are very resilient.
After pruning, Jimmy recommends mulching with composted pine bark or pine needles to help retain soil moisture. It's also the perfect time to fertilize your azaleas, which can help to avoid this: nutrient-starved leaves.
Well, if you live in the South, especially the western part of the South, you've probably experienced this problem: yellow azalea leaves. And this is not what they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be deep green and glossy.
If your azaleas lose the luster of their normal green and glossy leaves, the likely culprit is low iron, low nitrogen, or too high a pH. But there's a simple solution for all 3 issues.
Go to your local nursery and look for something that says azalea food. That's specially formulated for this, and it will take care of the problem.
Now that you've spent the time and energy creating your very own kingdom of azaleas, this garden royal will become the perfect backdrop for all the pageantry of the season. Next, feel like your plants are dying of thirst, but you don't have time to resuscitate? We've got some cool tools to help you hydrate. Some way to keep your house plants and container plants alive while you're on vacation? Well, here are 2 really simple solutions. An automatic plant watering system is as cool as it gets. There are all kinds of makes and models, and some can water up to 20 plants for up to 40 days. Here's the basic way these work. Be sure to place the water tank above the level of your plants. Connect the 2 ends of the hose to the tank to form a loop, and fix the hose in each pot with the stakes provided. Then you cut the hose with ordinary scissors close to each pot and connect the emitters. With that done, you fill the tank with water, select the most suitable watering timetable from 10 to 40 days, and let the system do the rest. And many of these auto watering systems can run for up to a year on just a store-bought battery. So beyond filling the tank with fresh water every 10 to 40 days, this thing is virtually maintenance-free. And if you'd like to learn more about it, as well as all sorts of other cool gardening gadgets, just go to my favorite website. That'd be hgtv.com. Now, some other time-saving, corner-cutting watering gadgets. Drip irrigation systems. They're great because they get concentrated amounts of water to your plants over time without you hauling the watering can. This type lets you wrap a bag around the base of a tree or shrub up to 4 inches in diameter. You then fill the bag with water. Over a period of 4 to 8 hours, water slowly drips from the emitters on the underside of the bag into the soil. A neat way to keep your thirsty plants drinking without overdoing it. And check this out. This terracotta water sensor actually lets you know when it's time to water. To use, simply stab it into the soil, and as it absorbs water, it darkens in color. When it returns to its original color, you know it's time to water. The last watering widget is this cool little froggy device. You just place the water wick in one of the prongs of the base, fill the frog with water, put the base on the frog, and stab the prongs on the underside of the base into the soil. So you see, you can take a trip without worrying about your house plants and container plants. And I think that's what I'll do tomorrow. Take a trip to my favorite trout stream and try out my new fly rod and reel. Water, water everywhere.